What's up guys, MizzoFrizzo from Pitchfork Academy here, and in this Unreal Engine 5 tutorial I'm going to show you how to set up a character switching mechanic, much like what you've seen in Grand Theft Auto 5. So I've got this character here, and if I press 2 on my keyboard, the camera is going to zip up into the sky, and then it's going to move over to the other character somewhere else in the city and move down to them and possess them. Like so. And if I press 3 on my keyboard, I've got a third character here, just like in GTA 5. I'll zip over to wherever they are on the map, zoom down to them, and then possess them, like so. But just before we get started, guys, if you like what we do here at Pitchfork Academy, the #1 way to support our channel is by checking out our new game, Skyblocker, which we've just released on Steam. It's a 3D arcade puzzle game where you stack blocks as high as you can to try and get a high score while battling the elements and gravity. But without further ado, let me show you how to do this. Alrighty guys, now I'm here in my base project, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a few character classes from the BP third person character that we will switch between. So I'm going to right click on BP third person character and create child blueprint class, and I'm just going to call this one BP underscore character underscore A. Now I'm going to make 3 of these, and they'll all be children of BP third person character. So I could right click on BP third person character again and create child blueprint class again, or I could just duplicate BP character A, because this is already a child of BP third person character. So I'll duplicate that and I'll call this one character B, duplicate it again and call this one character C, and I'll open up all 3 of these characters, and I'll just change the skeletal mesh and the animation blueprint so we can distinguish between them. I'll leave the first one as many with ABP many. I'll make the second one ABP Quinn and SKM Quinn. So character B will be Quinn. And character C, I will make the UE4 mannequin. So I'll select the skeletal mesh asset to be SK mannequin, and I'll make the anim class a retargeted animation blueprint of ABP many for this skeletal mesh, because his arms do a bit of a weird thing if you use ABP many. So I will browse to ABP many, and then I'll right click and retarget animations. I'll select SKM Quinn as the source skeletal mesh, SKM many, and the target skeletal mesh will be SK mannequin. I'll select ABP many and hit export animations, and then I'll replace many with UE4 mannequin and hit export. I didn't select a folder, whoops. I will actually just put these into characters, mannequin, UE4, and animations. So I'll drag them into animations and move here. And one thing you'll notice if you retarget Manny's animation blueprint, or really retarget any animations, quite often the additive animations have this problem where the additive settings don't really translate. So you'll see it's got the additive settings here, but he's doing some pretty weird sort of gigantism stuff going on here. And all you really need to do is just change this from local space to no additive, and then back to local space, and it will be fixed just like that. So make sure the additive settings are local space, frame from this animation, and frame 26. And now that that is fixed and we have this animation blueprint, I will set it as the animation blueprint for character C. And there we go, his arms are fixed. Nice. The next thing I'll do is I'll create a couple of variables in our BP third person character. So we'll open up BP third person character, and in here I want to create a variable called a character index that I will then set in my character A, character B, and character C. So I'll add a variable, we'll call it character index, and that will be an integer. And I'll also create a boolean called switching, which we will use to check if we are switching characters to prevent our player from, continuously switching when we're already switching. So make this a Boolean, and we'll make sure to set switching to instance editable and exposed on spawn. And you'll understand why we do that a bit later on. So now that we've created this character index in BP third person character, and character A, B, and C are children of that blueprint, we can then go into this blueprint character A, and in the class defaults here in the details panel, we can find character index and make sure it is set to 0 by default in character A. Character B, we're going to set the character index to 1. And in character C, we'll go to the class defaults and we'll set the character index to 2. Nice. And that is pretty much all we'll need to do in these 3 characters that we've created. So we can close those, and I'm going to hit save all. And just before we set up the logic to switch characters in our third person character, I'm going to create the sort of cam switcher blueprint that we'll sort of possess and we'll use to move between our characters. So we'll right click just here in the third person blueprints folder and create a new blueprint class of type actor, and I'll call this BP underscore cam switcher. And we'll go in here and we'll just do a couple of things. We'll add the camera to the components tab here. So we'll hit add and we'll add a camera. And the camera will just change the second argument on the rotation to -90 to make the camera face down. And just before we go and do our logic in the third person character, I'm also going to create a custom event in this cam switcher that we can call from our character. So we'll head over to the event graph and find some empty space and right click and create a new custom event. And I'll just call it init switch for initiate switch. And I'll give it a couple of inputs. Actually, what I'll do instead of creating the inputs here is I will just create a couple of variables. I'll call the first one PC, and it will be a player controller reference, player controller object reference. And I'll also create one called index, and it will be an integer. And then I will set both of these, and I will just drag the input pin onto this node here, and that will create the inputs of the correct types for us. Nice. So those are the first things that we'll do on init switch in our cam switcher, but I just wanted to create this so we could call it from our third person character. So we'll compile and save and head to our third person character. And then the first thing I'm going to do in here, if I'm working in UE 5.5, this replaces the event begin play on the add input mapping section here. And I don't actually want it set up like this. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to find event begin play. And I will also get player controller. And the player controller I will promote to a variable, call it PC. Plug in the execution pins like so, and plug in the output of PC into the enhanced input local player subsystem. Nice. So now we have a reference to this player controller, and we will be needing that shortly. But the next thing we'll do is we'll find some empty space down here, and we'll create a couple of custom events so that we can call from a function that we'll create shortly. So I'm going to right click, create a custom event, and I'm going to call it switch to cam switcher, and I'm going to control C that name and create one more custom event, and I'll call it switch from cam switcher like so. These don't need any inputs, but I just wanted to create these because we're going to call them as we create our code. So let's create a function and let's call it set character index. And set character index, we want to have one input, which will be index, and we'll make it an integer. So basically, when we call this, we're going to pass through what character we want to switch to, and it will be 0, 1, or 2 for our 3 characters. So the first thing we can do is check if this index is not equal to character index, because we don't want to switch if we're already on the character index that we're trying to switch to. We're already on that character, so we don't need to switch. And the other thing we want to check for is we'll get an AND boolean, and off of here we'll get a not boolean, and we'll check that we are not already switching, like so, because we also don't want to switch if we are indeed already switching. We can drag off of this AND boolean and press B to get a branch. And then if we do want to switch characters, the first thing we can do is set switching to true. And then we'll grab our PC, our player controller reference, and we'll disable input so that we can't keep running around with that character while we're switching from it. And this won't actually be the target, this will be the player controller. The target is the self. And then we can set the character index as the index that we passed through when we called the function, like so. We'll create a couple of reroute nodes and keep this neat and tidy. And the next thing we'll do in here is we'll spawn our cam switcher. So we can drag off of here and spawn actor from class. Whoops. And the class that we want to spawn is our cam switcher, BP cam switcher. We'll right click on the spawn transform and split the struct pin, and we'll get the location of our character. So get actor location, and we're going to add to this, and we're basically just going to add a value on the z-axis and spawn the cam switcher a certain number of units above our character. But we'll make this a variable so that you guys can customize this if you like. We'll right click on this pin here and we'll split the struct pin. And then the z-axis here, I'm going to set to 500 because I'm going to make mine 500. I'll drag off of here and promote this to a variable. And I'll call this target camera boom length. Target camera boom length. There we go. It's actually a spring arm, but in the third person template, it's called a camera boom. That's all good. Target camera boom length, and I'll compile and I'll make sure that the default of this is what I want it to be. So I'll make it 500, and basically this is the distance above the character. The camera will move up above the character looking down. This is the distance from the character that it will sort of transition into the cam switcher and fly up into the sky from there. So I'll make it 500, and because I've made this a variable, you guys can just change this default value of the variable, and it will just change the behavior of the whole system for you, so it's a little bit customizable. The collision handling override here, I'll change to always spawned, ignore collisions, and I'll drag off of the return value here, promote this to a variable, and call it cam switcher. And then the last thing I want to do in here is call my switch to cam switcher function or custom event that I've created. Nice. And that is all we really need to do in here. We can then go back out to the event graph and we can start setting up this switch to cam switcher logic. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is get the control rotation. So basically where our camera is looking, and I'm going to lerp that up into looking down below the character. So I will grab my reference to the player controller and get control rotation. And then I'll promote this to a variable and I'll call it start control rot for rotation. And we're going to use this on a timeline with a lerp node, and we'll lerp up to that rotation. So we'll right click over here and add a timeline, and I'll plug in to play from start. I'll double click on this timeline. I'll make the length 1 second and add a float track. And then I'll shift and click twice to get 2 keyframes. I'll select the first one, set the time to 0 and the value to 0. Select the second one and set the time to the maximum, which is 1 second, and the value to 1. Zoom out a little bit and select both of these, and then right click and select auto so it smooths it out a little bit. Nice. And that's all we need to do in the timeline. We can close this and head back to the event graph. And what we're going to do on update is grab our player controller and set control rotation on update. And off of new rotation, we can get a lerp rotator. And actually what we'll do is we'll duplicate this start control rot, and we'll make it a variable, so again you can customize this. So I'll select start control rot, control D to duplicate, and I'll call the other one target control rotation. And I'll compile and I'll set the target control rotation's default value to 0, 269, and 0. And that's basically because 270 is the figure it outputs when you're looking straight down on your character. And we don't want to make this 270 because it can cause some sort of whack behavior because of Unreal Engine 5, not really using quaternions for rotation. I won't go into that, but basically if you make this 270, you might encounter some bizarre behavior. So this is just sort of the angle that it will go up to, and it will then sort of possess our cam switcher anyway. So this is absolutely fine. And what we'll do on this lerp rotator is plug the start control rot into the A, target control rot into B, and this float track into the alpha. And we will also check shortest path. It does sort of make the camera rotate a little bit on axes that, isn't ideal, but I found that this is much, much easier than trying to set this up to sort of, because if you don't check shortest path, you'll sometimes get some funky rotations when the camera rotates up. I can sort of show you the difference here. So if I uncheck shortest path, this is all set up and this should execute. So if we hit play now, I haven't got anything that calls the function. So just for testing, what I'll do is I'll right click down here and I'll find a keyboard event 1. I'll duplicate this and I will select this one, click the little keyboard icon and press 2 to set this one to a press of the 2 key. And I'll also set this one to be a press of the 3 key, and then we'll call set character index. We'll set it as 0 when we press 1, and we'll set it as 1 and 2 when we press 2 and 3, like so. Nice. Now we can actually call this functionality so we can see what happens when we press one of these keys. If I look here and I press 2, see, it does some pretty crazy sort of flipping. And to set it up to not do that, it's pretty tricky. It does like a full rotation. So if we just check shortest path, you'll see that this is a sort of much, and pay no attention to that end rotation at the end there where it rotates by 90 degrees. It's not going to do that because we're going to switch to our cam switcher by that point. That's, I believe, just because this target rotation is a bit close to 270. But that's okay. Don't worry about that for now. The next thing we'll do is we'll also extend our camera boom length up to the same distance above our character that we want it to be and where we're spawning that, that cam switcher. So as you remember here, we spawn the cam switcher, this variable amount above our character on the z-axis, 500 units above the character. So we also want our camera boom to lerp out to this length. So we will also grab our camera boom and we will set target arm length. I'm going to sort of stack these on top of each other like so, and I'll grab a lerp here, lerp node, And actually, just in case you have any kind of custom camera system set up, I'll also set a variable that is the current target arm length of the camera boom. So I'll duplicate this get camera boom node over here, and I'll get the target arm length. And I might just duplicate this variable, target camera boom length. I'll duplicate that, and I'll make this one the current camera boom length, or start camera boom length, just to keep it same naming convention as this other one. Keep those grouped together. Nice. And I'll set start camera boom length. I'll set it here off the current target arm length of our camera boom. And then that way we have something to lerp from and to. Nice. I'll plug in the float track into the alpha, and now I want to set up the logic so that we switch to our cam switcher once we get to this point. So what I'm actually going to do is switch once this alpha gets to 0.9, because if I do it on finish, we'll sort of leave some room for error there, and it might produce some sort of not so smooth results. So I'll drag off of the float track here, and I'll check if greater than 0.9. Drag off of here and press B to get a branch. So once this alpha hits 0.9, I'll get a do once, just so it doesn't, because this is actually plugged into update up here. So this is going to fire many, many times. But once it hits 0.9, I only want it to do this once. So I'll grab a do once. And now we'll do a sort of camera fade, kind of like a flash, similar to GTA 5, where it kind of flashes and makes a sound, and it kind of masks the movement of that camera and the switch to that camera. So we'll get a pretty GTA 5-like result if we do it this way. We'll get the player camera manager, and off of get player camera manager, we will find a node called start camera fade. And this is actually pretty handy. I use this to fade to and from black to sort of mask loading in and loading out in my games. It's pretty handy node, but instead of using black today, we're going to use white and create a kind of little flash effect on our screen. So this is basically, it lerps from one alpha to another over the duration and using whatever color you've selected here. So I'm going to go from an alpha of 0 to an alpha of 0.4. So this white color will basically have 0.4 opacity. And I'm going to do it over a very short duration of 0.1 seconds. And I'm also going to check hold when finished. And then let's also play a sound. So I'll play a sound here, play sound 2D. And in the engine content, there is a sound called teleport committed. And I quite like this sound. It's just in the engine content, so it should be there. It's a nice little sound. So we turn the volume down on this, it will actually be a nice little whoosh sound for our little flashy effect. So teleport committed, I'll select that. And I'll change the volume multiplier to 0.25 to make that nice and quiet. That's all I need to do with that. And now that we've sort of got this flash happening, I also want to start blending in our new camera target, which is our cam switcher. I'll actually put a delay here of 0.1 seconds. And that's because this flash will take 0.1 seconds, and then we're going to do the reverse of this after 0.1 seconds. So after 0.1 seconds, what we'll do is grab our player controller here, and we'll find a node called set view target with blend. And this basically makes you possess a camera of a new target. So it's a very, very handy node. And we can actually get our cam switcher variable that we created when we spawned it, plug it into the new view target here, and I'll make the blend time 0.1. And actually, I'm going to do this before the flash, like so. I'll make the blend time 0.1, and I found that the blend function that works best here is pre-blended. That sort of gets rid of any jankiness, and we will check lock outgoing as well. So now that we've sort of made the white flash come in, made a sound, transition to our cam switcher, we then want to sort of reverse this white flash. So I'm going to duplicate this node, and I'm going to plug the execution pin in from the delay over here. Get a couple of reroute nodes and keep this neat and tidy. And on this node, I went from alpha 0 to 0.4, and now I want to go from 0.4 back to 0 over the same duration, like so. And while we're doing that, sort of in the middle here, this is when it's sort of at its whitest, and it's going to take 0.1 seconds to sort of lerp back down. I'll call my init switch on my cam switcher. So I'm actually just going to drag off of cam switcher here and call the initiate switch function that we created. And I'll pass through the player controller as well. And I'll also grab our character index and pass that through. Nice. So we've got our flash, we've got our sound, we've blended to the camera in our cam switcher, and we've also called this function in the cam switcher, so we can start making the cam switcher, do its thing. And we're also going to want to destroy this character, but not so soon that the cam switcher, sort of hasn't finished its job yet. So we'll actually add a delay here, and a delay of about 10 seconds should be more than enough. Delay of 10 seconds, and then we'll get this actor to destroy itself. Destroy actor. Nice. That's pretty much all we need to do for the switch to cam switcher. And now we can switch to our cam switcher and set up what we want to happen on init switch here. We need a target on this start camera fade. It is the player camera manager. Forgot to plug that in. And then we'll go to our cam switcher and we'll finish setting up this init switch logic right here. The first thing I want to do in here is actually delay. I'll put in a ½ second delay, and this is basically the delay before the first movement up into the sky that the cam switcher makes. And there's a couple of nodes here that we could probably just grab from our third person character. We will grab the start camera fade, and we'll get the fade out as well. We'll also grab the play sound node. We'll get the delay node in the middle. And that should be all we really need. I'll Control C that and then go back to the cam switcher and paste it in. And we'll put all of these in a row. I'll actually duplicate the player camera manager, so this one will have its own. And I'll put this over here. And basically what we want to do in between the delay and the fade back in is we want to move our cam switcher up into the sky. And we'll do this 3 times, then we'll move over to our new character, and then we'll come back down and possess our new character. So right here, I will set actor location. Set actor location. And I will get actor location. And then I'm going to add, so I'm basically getting where our cam switcher is. And then once again, I'm going to add a certain number of units to the z-axis and just move it up. And I'll expose this as a variable as well, just in case you guys want to customize this. I'm going to make mine move up by 5,000 units 3 times, so 15,000 units, but you're welcome to change this if you like. So I'm going to right click here and split the struct pin. I'll set Z to 15,000 units, And then I'll drag off of here and promote this to a variable. And we'll call this cam switching height or something like that. Whoops, I cannot type today. Cam switching height. And this is the total. So I'm setting my default value to 15,000, but I'm actually going to do this 3 times. So I'm actually going to divide this by 3 and plug that in there like so. And then this can plug into the new location here. Because we're going to do it 3 times, that's why I divided this by 3. And I'll take all of these nodes right here all the way back to the delay. I'll Control D to duplicate them and move them up. And I'll plug the execution pin from the end here over here. And I'm not going to bother with reroute nodes. I'm pretty much done with this logic here, so I'm not going to try and make it any tidier than it is. But I am going to change the delay at the start here to 1 second. And then I'm going to grab all of this once more and duplicate it. And once again, plug the execution pins in like so. And now we've gone boom, 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 up into the sky 3 times. Nice. The next thing that we want to do is basically spawn the character that we're switching to, and then we'll move over to them and then do the reverse of this and possess them. So now I'll just get the actor location once more. Get actor location. I'll promote this to a variable and I'll call it start lock for start location. I'll plug this in like so. And I'll also create a variable that will tell us which character to spawn. So I'll create a new variable. I'll call it character to spawn. And this will be a BP third person character class reference. A class reference to the BP third person character. I'll set this and I'll drag off of the input pin and get a select node. I'll grab our index, plug it into the index, and add a pin. And then these 3 options will be our character A, our character B, and our character C. Nice. And the next thing I want to do is grab a location to spawn this character in. Now, I'm going to do it kind of similar to GTA 5, where they could be, you know, sort of somewhere else in the city, and you go and you switch to them. And it'll be up to you to sort of build on this if you want this in your game and you want, for example, the characters to be walking around in the city as you come down and you possess them and you start playing as them. But basically what I'm going to be doing is just adding 1 location for each character, and then it'll be up to you to add more locations if you want to add to this system later. So let's actually just duplicate this start lock variable. And I'll call it spawn location. So that's going to be a vector. And then I'll also duplicate spawn location and I'll call the first one character A. Character A, spawn locations. And I'll right click here and make it a array. Or you can always click up here and set it as array. And then I'll duplicate this and I'll make the next one character B, spawn locations, and duplicate it 1 more time. Whoops. And this will be character C, spawn locations. So these are arrays and you can populate them with many different spawn locations, but I'm just going to be giving them 1 spawn location each. Just need to compile again to get rid of that error. Nice. So we'll set spawn location here, and I'll drag off a spawn location and get a select node. I'll grab the index, plug it into index, and add a pin. So we've got 3 pins. And then I'll get each of these arrays that we just created. And I'll get a random array item from each one. plug these into the 3 options here on the select node. And I'll just make these line up and try and make it a bit neater. Nice. So each time we do this, each time we switch, we'll get the character to spawn, and then this spawn location variable will grab a random entry from the spawn locations of whichever character you're trying to switch to. And we'll sort of create these spawn locations now before we forget while we're here. We'll do it now. So basically what I'm going to do is here in my sort of base map, I'm going to drag out character A just anywhere, and then right here the location is what I'm going to use. I'm going to right click on that and copy that, and then I'm going to delete this guy. I don't need him anymore. And in the cam switcher in character A spawn locations, I'll add an element, and then I'll right click here and I'll paste that location in there like so. Nice. I'm going to do the same with characters B and C. And what I'm going to do is just grab the floor here and hold Alt and click and drag this out and duplicate the floor. And I'll do it one more time. I'll hold Alt and click and duplicate this floor. And then I've just pressed F to focus in on that floor there. I'll drag character B out and then right click the location and copy. And then I can delete that, go back into the cam switcher, character B spawn locations, add an array element, right click here and paste this in. And last but not least, I'll throw character C down over here, copy the location, delete him, and then add that location to the character C spawn locations array. Nice. So those locations are all stored in there now. Let's keep going with this. What we now want to do is grab our character to spawn and spawn actor from class. And I'll right click the spawn transform and split the struct pin, and then I'll plug this spawn location straight into the spawn transform location like so. Nice. And because we made switching instance editable and exposed on spawn, it's exposed on the spawn node here, we can check this so that the character we're spawning already has the switching variable set to be true, so they won't be able to switch straight back out again. Nice. We'll drag off the return value here, promote this to a variable, and I'll call this spawned character. Whoops, really can't type today. Spawn character. And now we basically want to move the camera over to that character's location. I'm going to leave a delay here, and this delay is basically how long the camera will stay above the character you're switching from. And I'm going to set this to 1.5 seconds because I feel like it's a nice little pause. And also it's worth noting that this would be probably when you load any levels. If you need to load a sub-level, for example, that your new character is in, you might want to be doing that, at the sort of same time here. And then this will give you a bit of a buffer to make sure everything's loaded and, whatever you want to set up before you switch that character. But basically, what we'll do now is we'll move our camera over to that character. I'm going to use a timeline here, and I'm going to use the same timeline from our BP third person character that we used right here because it's already 1 second long and has a 0 to 1 float track. So I'm going to Control-C this timeline from third person character. I'll paste it in over here and plug this into play from start. And I'll double click this to open it up because although we set this to auto and this is nice and smooth, I actually want my camera to start flying a little bit faster and then sort of slow down and settle in to its location at the end. So I'm going to select this first keyframe and just angle this up a little bit. I don't want to go too high because if we go above 1 here, we'll sort of go past the character and then back over to it. It will look a little bit strange. So I'm going to make this as steep as I can, basically without the line going over that one line too much, like so. Nice. And this is the kind of curve that I want to use for my cam switch. What we'll do on update here is we will set the actor location of the self. which is the cam switcher, and we'll grab a lerp vector, lerp vector. We'll plug the alpha into the alpha, and we want to lerp from our start lock to our spawn location, like so. Actually, no, we want to lerp from our start lock to our spawn location plus, and we'll split the struct pin here, and we'll lerp from the the start location to the spawn location plus the cam switching height. So we obviously want to stay above the character by this amount, plus the target arm length. That our spawned character has that camera boom target length that the camera sort of moves up to. So we can drag off the spawned character here, and we can get, what did we call it? Get camera boom, get target camera boom length. And we'll add these together. And we'll add those to the Z of the spawn location, and that will be what we'll lerp to. Nice. And now that this is done, we can basically make our camera go whoosh, 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 and jump down towards our new character. So we can do that on finished here, but I'll grab a bunch of nodes from over here because these are already set up and it will be super handy. So I'll actually grab all of these like so, and I'll duplicate them over here. I'll plug finished into the delay. And then there won't really be much that we need to change here, but we do need to subtract we basically need to subtract this instead of adding it. So we'll replace this add node with a subtract, and we'll right click on the pin and split the struct pin, and then we'll plug this into the Z like so, plug this into the new location, and then we should be all good to go ahead and duplicate this 2 more times. So I'll grab all of this, duplicate this 2 more times, plug in the execution pins, and in case you hadn't clued on yet, I've kind of set this up to mirror what our camera is doing. It's going whoosh, whoosh, whoosh up into the sky. It's spawning the character, moving over to the character, and then it's going to go whoosh, 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 and down towards our character. But one thing we want to do here is we don't just want to subtract sort of 5,000 each time, because on this last one here, we want to make sure that we're coming down to our character's location plus the target arm length, the camera boom target length. So we'll actually get our spawn location, and we'll get the character to spawn as well. No, sorry, not the character to spawn, the spawned character. And we will, once again, we're getting this, the target camera boom length. So we'll get that, we'll duplicate it down here. And we basically just want to replace all of this here. We'll get the spawn location, so the character we're switching to, and we'll just add and split the struct pin and plug this into the Z. And this is the final place that our cam switcher will move to before we move into our character and possess it. So this is just to make sure that this last movement here is down to the correct position just above our character, 500 units above our character, and then we'll switch into our character. So after this, we'll make another delay, and we'll make it about half a second. And then we'll do our little flashy effect again. So we'll grab these fade nodes, we'll grab the delay node, both fade nodes, and the sound node. We'll duplicate this over here, plug this in. So we'll start our fade, we'll play our sound, and then we'll delay by 0.1 of a second, and then we'll basically, before we fade back in, we will possess our character. So we'll grab our player controller here, and actually, just to save time, what I'll do is I'll go back to our third person character, and I'll just duplicate this set view target with blend node. I'll grab this because it already has the blend time and the blend function. I'll Control C that. I'll paste that in here and plug in the execution pins. The target will be our PC, and the new view target will be our spawned character. And then that is all good to go. We are basically possessing our character. Well, we're possessing the camera. We also need to actually possess the character. So we'll do that now after our fade back in. And I know this is a lot, guys, but we're almost there. I'll put a delay in of just, 0.1 seconds. And I'll grab our spawned character, and I'll call the switch from cam switcher that we created in our third person character. I'll put one more delay of 0.2 of a second, and then I'll destroy actor. And this is just to give us time to possess this character, because we're going to do it from this function right here, the switch from cam switcher. So that is basically all set up in the cam switcher. And now we can go back to our third person character. Actually, I'll compile and I'll save that cam switcher. And in the third person character, we want to find this custom event we created earlier, switch from cam switcher. And literally all we need to do here is get our player controller, and we'll possess, and the in pawn will be this character. So we'll just get a reference to self. And then we will also enable input and plug PC into player controller and set switching back to false. And that should be absolutely everything. That should be working now. But one thing I just want to do is in my world settings over here, I'm going to change the default pawn class to my character A. So I'm spawning as character A. I'm going to hit save all and hit play, and I'll full screen this, and let's see if this is working. So I've got my character here. If I press 2, nice, I've switched to character B, and if I press 3, and I've switched to character 3. Nice, that's all working as intended. Guys, that's it. If this tutorial has been of any use or value to you whatsoever, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.